Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of College Blitz. I think this is 4 or 5 for us, Q.
Something like that, man. Something like that. Time flies.
Time
Time flies when
flies.
you're having
Time
fun, man.
flies when you got good people to talk college football about. You lose track of time. Another Wednesday, another episode of College Blitz. Q, how was your weekend? How's everything going for you?
Bro, everything is good, man. What do we have? We're hump day, I guess, today, right? The week has been busy. Been working like crazy. Little tired, but week hasn't been bad. And man, I don't even what I do during the weekend. I don't even remember what the hell I did during the weekend. Actually, yeah, man, just hung out by the pool and everything was nice and chill, man. Nothing too too terribly fun or exciting, man. But chilled by the pool on Sunday and had some adult beverages and just enjoyed it, man. Just relax a little bit, and then of course the week started and it's been go. So
even when you go, we always get up to talk college football.
Yeah, man, you got to make some time, man. Got to make some time to.
Well, we're a little under 5 more weeks, I think.
What are we? What's today?
We're under a month. We'll be
under
5.
Yeah, we're right at 5 weeks, I think, man. Because August 30th. So I think officially, yeah, I think we're right at 5 weeks, man. So moving right along.
I'm guessing there's probably football before August 30th, but we're talking games that actually matter.
Yes, no disrespect to the Power Four and those. Yeah, I think somebody will get started on like Wednesday or something like that. I may watch it.
There's games on the 23rd, but Iowa State, Kansas State, okay.
Oh, that's the 23rd?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's watchable.
Hey, so listen, let's correct that. We are 30 days away from football. 30 days from football.
Stanford, Hawaii, Fresno State, Kansas, Sam Houston, Western Kentucky, UNLV, Idaho State. So Iowa State, Kansas State. That's man.
I'll take that one.
Yeah, I'll take it. But good week for me. We get up. Long week but good week. Ready to get after, talk a little defending national champs Ohio State football tonight. A little more Big Ten football. They lost. Kicking off talking about Ohio State. Hell of a year last year. Obviously, in my opinion, Ryan Day was on the hot seat. In my opinion, he had one thing he could do to keep his job, especially losing to Michigan. What would you lose? He hasn't beat Michigan. He's last 3 years in a row.
I think 4 straight losses last year. I think
4 is probably right. He had one job to do to keep his job, in my opinion, and that was it wasn't make the national title game. It was like you got to win it all, especially if you lose to Michigan 4 times in a row. There's one thing they care about in Columbus, and that's beating Michigan.
100%. Yeah, and listen, before we get too deep into it, guys, we want to just remind you what we're doing here today. This is part 2 of a series that we came up with. It's a 5-part series, and it's titled, National Title Contenders, Why They Won't, and just kind of breaking down, some of the teams that I think on a national level and kind of the consensus, some of them, right? Not all of them. We're not going to touch on all of them. We just won't have the time, but we picked 5 teams that we thought were at the very top of the projections in terms of national title favorites and everything. Last week, we did the University of Georgia. If you guys want to go back and watch that one, and then this week is part 2 of a 5-part series, and we're focusing on Ohio State. And to piggyback off what you're saying, I think you're right. When you lose to Michigan, right? If you're at Michigan and you lose to Ohio State, when you're at Ohio State, you lose to Michigan. Short of winning the national title, which is what Ohio State did last year, the season never feels like it went the right way, right? Because of the game, right? And it's such a big game that they literally just call it the game, right? And so those games they mean a ton to those fan bases, right? You see how much those teams don't like each other. If everybody remembers, Michigan planting the flag, at the shoe, and Jack Sawyer losing his mind, about having to be held back, from starting to fight and and all that stuff. And I mean, that's just one in so many, different, battles and run-ins with those two teams and everything. They truly, truly dislike each other. And, that makes it, such a fun rivalry and a rivalry that really everybody follows and everybody's, everybody knows when that game is, right? It's always a 12 o'clock kick. For some reason, I don't know why they don't make it at night, but, it's always a 12 o'clock kick.
Always that first game. It wakes you up. You're good to go.
Which I'm cool with it, man. That sets a tone for the Saturday and everything, man. I'm with it. It just feels like one of those games that should be on.
It's also a night game in Ann Arbor or Columbus during November. Freezing.
Yeah, it just it just has that feel though, right? It has that feel of a night game. But I like it at 12, right? Because I don't have a rooting interest in the game, but it tends to kick the day off, the right way because it tends to be a really good game, right? So but there again, man, I mean, they lose that game, right? And they lose to Oregon also throughout the course of the season. You're like, and in a game, versus Oregon that, it just kind of at the end, some miscommunication and everything. And Will Howard, slides too late and they don't get a field goal attempt off and everything. And so, fast forward and there's nothing to see here because they won the national title, right? But
nothing to see. They beat Oregon. They beat the brakes off Oregon too.
Exactly, right? So exactly. Fast forward to the playoff, little revenge, right? And so, obviously everything worked out for them and everything, but they go on, they win the title, but then the exodus starts from Columbus, right? And you can't overlook the fact that you lose 14 players of the draft, right? A team that's super loaded,
second most in college football history, tied for the second most players leaving.
Yeah.
Draft.
Yeah. Just, a super loaded team and a team that obviously recruits well, right? They're always, they always got a top 5, top 10 class, and not, you add to that what they did in the portal, obviously huge portal additions, right? Will Howard at quarterback. You look a little bit further back, even before then, right? Caleb Downs came in, the year before, but when Saban left, but you got, Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins, who was instrumental in what they did last year and everything. And so, those guys, huge contributors, but also now guys that have left huge voids, on the roster and talent, that has to be replaced.
100%, Q. I mean, you lose 14 players, which is insane. Not just what you lost offensively, defensively, but you lose 2 starters on the offensive line in Donovan Jackson and was it John Simmons?
Josh Simmons, Donovan Jackson, both first round picks.
So you lose 2 key guys to not talked about enough of how important a good offensive line is. And as myself and Will Howard had a phenomenal year, but if you look back at Kansas State, he was a good quarterback, but it wasn't like he was at the level he was last year where he's got a top 5 offensive line protecting him with 2 first-round guys on the line. So, great, did a good job at Kansas State, but, he took it to the next level at Ohio State and not talked about enough, losing those two first-round offensive linemen, how they're going to replace those guys, especially Donovan Jackson, who's on the left side.
Yeah, and listen, and somebody who they have to replace also is the center, Seth McLaughlin. He won the Remington Award as the best center in the country, right? So when you're looking at what it is you're replacing, right? You're 2 guys winning the first round, a Remington Award winner, right? And now you're replacing them, with guys who, kind of surprising when you look at that roster and who it is that these guys are being replaced by. You look at PFF grades, and I preface what I'm about to say with this. You look at PFF grades, take those with a grain of salt, especially when it comes to offensive line. The way they grade out players and stuff like that, a little bit different than they do at the other positions. But you're looking at the 5 projected starters for Ohio State, all have a below average, a grade on PFF, and they're potential starting left tackle is a transfer from Rice, who didn't grade out well at Rice the season before, right? And so, got a sidelines Ohio State, go Bucks. I won't echo those sentiments, but my man, appreciate you tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in, man.
Appreciate you tuning in.
My good buddy went to school in Cincinnati. He went to Xavier in Cincinnati, so a couple of his buddies went to Ohio State, and they're all huge Buckeyes fans.
Yeah.
But not to mention, like you said, losing that center and the offensive line. But you lose both coordinators and your defensive coordinator, and you lose Chip Kelly. So you're gonna have, Matt Patricia taking over the defense, and Brian Hartline, who's been there, taking the offense over.
Yeah, and again, you look at. And I was going to get to the coordinators, which obviously is super important. But not only, again, you look at where you're replacing at O-line, right? You look at you're replacing at running back. And I know before we keep moving forward, I know, and if it's sidelines Ohio State or whoever it is, may have an opinion on this. Like, I know that they are going to be talented. Like, I understand that. The thing is, when you're replacing what you're replacing, right? And I understand that you'll replace it with talent, but when you're replacing the experience and the production, right? Because talent is that, right? Unproven talent is potential, right? These guys were recruited, they're super highly recruited, offers from all the big schools in the country. When Ohio State's not winning recruiting battles versus Temple and G5 type person. I mean, those guys, when they commit to Ohio State, they've got offers from all the biggest schools in the country, right? So I get that what they have on that roster is blue chip all the way across the board. But when you're talking about what you're replacing, right? So now it's an O-line that is going to have a bunch of new starters protecting a quarterback that is brand new, right? You're replacing, a guy like Will Howard with a guy like Julian Sayin, who is, a talented guy, right? Again, another talented guy, but who is a guy that you're projecting to be good, and a guy who hasn't proven anything, right? A guy that barely played last year. Will Howard was obviously healthy, leading a great offense, but the numbers he put up last year, he went 5 for 12 for 84 yards, right? So, right now all we have with Julian Sayin really is projection, right? He was the number 2 quarterback in the country when he came out, right behind DJ Lagway, and obviously a guy who's super talented, a guy who left Alabama when Nick Saban left and everything, and we don't know what we have in Julian Sayin, right? I mean, again, he's talented. Again, he was a 5-star kid and the whole deal, but we're not 100% sure exactly what it is that you've got in a kid like Julian Sayin. And now he's going to be surrounded by new people all around him, right? And now, just like what you were saying, now you add to that you have a new coordinator and a new offensive coordinator in Brian Hartline, right? And he's not taking over for a guy who was fired, right? He's not taking over for a guy who was incompetent, a guy who people wanted out. No, he's taking over for a guy named Chip Kelly, right? A guy who's run elite offenses at Oregon, for a ton of years, a guy who, spent time as an NFL head coach, with the San Francisco 49ers, and as a 49ers fan, a tenure that I would definitely like to forget. Obviously, he spent some time with the Eagles and everything. So this guy, very well respected offensive mind, back in the NFL with the Las Vegas Raiders, and being replaced by a guy like Brian Hartline, who hasn't really proven anything, at that position. I mean, he's proven that he can recruit the wide receiver position, but he hasn't proven, that he's a guy who can be an offensive coordinator, who can call plays, come game day. And so that is as interesting to me a storyline, in Columbus as really I think you can find, aside from the players. I think replacing Chip Kelly is as big or bigger a storyline than really, just about any offensive player, that they're replacing.
100%. I mean, we all saw what Chip did when he was at Oregon, and then with the Eagles, New Hampshire going back. It definitely took a fall back on, when he went to UCLA. But the talent, obviously, you saw what he could do with the talent he had, is leaps and bounds better than than what he had at UCLA. So I mean, that's going to be a big loss. And like you said, I like how you hit on that. Julian Sayin is a very talented guy. For a reason, he's there. Obviously, the number 2 QB in that class. So the talent's there. It's not. We don't think they can win it all because of him. It's just you've never seen him been able to put it on the field. Yeah. So it's all like I'm a baseball scout, and a lot of, I mean, it's all projection, but you're projecting to high school. You're taking a high school kid over a college kid. You're doing a lot more long-term projection. We're all just projecting on saying we think he's going to be great. That's what, recruiting grades and PFF do. They're just projecting. We see this. We think this is. I mean, it's just projection. We haven't seen anything on field play from Sayin. But I mean, for a guy like Sayin to come in, where you have arguably the best college football wide receiver, the best offensive player in the game right now with Jeremiah Love, and then
Jeremiah
Jeremiah Smith, excuse me. And then you've got number 2 Cardell Tate, who'd probably be a number 1 on another team. So the cast around him for a young guy like that coming in with a the best offensive player, probably the best player in college football, and then you got Cardell Tate, who could be a 1 on other teams, who's your number 2. Then you add, was it Max Clare?
The tight end, tight end Max Clare that came in from Purdue, who was I think at the time he committed was the number 1 tight end in the portal. So
I mean, for me is how is was it DJ Donaldson going to be the transfer? Because I mean, in my opinion, what Ohio State was really good at last year, it's like, yeah, we got guys who could take it over the top with Tate, with Love, with Smiths. my bad, and Emeka Egbuka, but the running game,
Jeremiah Smith and Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis. I mean, they were loaded.
I mean, the running game was what kept them was so great with Junkins and with Trayvon Henderson. How is was it DJ Donaldson, correct? From West Virginia, going to take that over?
Yeah, listen, I mean, he good pickup right there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that kid's going to be as good as what he's replacing. And again, I haven't looked at the stable running backs. Man, those guys, recruit elite running backs year in and year out. But just like you were saying, right, when you have Jeremiah Smith on one side, right, who's by all accounts the best player in college football at this point as a true sophomore, which is insane.
Probably been the first pick last year.
Yeah, and then you have Carnell Tate, on the other side, who obviously, was a 5-star kid when he committed, right, and the whole deal. I mean, you have to like your chances. You have Max Clare at tight end. Yeah, you have to like your chances in terms of, Julian Sayin and what he's got around him. Yeah, but again, to say that this is a no doubt, easy transition when you're talking about, replacing all those pieces at O-line, when you're talking about replacing Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, guys that were taken, in the top 3 rounds of the NFL draft, and guys who are going to contribute on their new teams, right? Travion Henderson, you can see him, getting early playing time with the Patriots, Quinshon Judkins with the Browns. Those are guys who are going to contribute on Sundays, right? Guys who were super, super talented dudes. And guys that, again, I don't know that it is a foregone conclusion that what they have on that roster you're going to be able to replicate in terms of what they did last year. And there again, man, those guys, I see, the over under 10.5 for this team. I'll be honest with you, man. I'm with what you're replacing on the field, off the field. I'm not saying it can't be done. And again, we named this, why they won't for a reason. I think you can see a scenario where they just don't, they just cannot in year one, right? Now, I'm not saying next year, who knows, right? But I think you can make a very compelling argument that in year one of this, transition and mass exodus that they had on offense, I think you can see some growing pains, right? And you can see that starting off game 1 versus Texas. You can see a scenario, with this opening game, and granted, it's a non-conference game, right? But with what they have to, navigate and traverse in the Big Ten. I don't know, man. 10.5 wins, to me as the over under, I'm taking the under.
I'm looking at it, and I looked at it earlier. I could see 10. If I take out Texas, Michigan, I could see 10. But you also got to factor in, Wisconsin plays everybody tough. And if it's a Wisconsin team, Wisconsin plays tough. Minnesota will play you tough. Illinois is getting a lot better. You're in Camp Randall. You're in Champaign. Penn State, who knows? I'm not bought on Penn State. But I could see a 10 wins, but the Texas and the Michigan game is always Texas, which is projection too. What we're doing is what everybody's talking about, Arts. It's all projection. But, I think that's going to be a great game, and I'm super stoked that game. We're going to have that game on the 30th. But the Michigan game, I'm not even, looking at. That's a toss-up. Because we saw Michigan wasn't very good last year. They ended up and they beat Ohio State. It's not your typical Ohio State's the best team in the country right now. Even though we're a 6-win team, we come out to beat you.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at the schedule, again, obviously, week 1 versus Texas. Personally, even though the game is in Columbus, we're still 5 weeks out. My money early on, I think, would be on Texas. Personally, you have to go to Washington, which I think sneaky tough game. At Illinois, which people are projecting to be really good this year. I don't know, man. At Wisconsin, I don't know what's going on in Wisconsin right now, man. Luke Fickell doesn't have any real presence.
Wisconsin is.
Listen,
I still think they're kind of getting with the times.
Yeah, but there again, right? Camp Randall doesn't have the mystique or the cachet that it did, 10 years ago, right? They were always good for like a big upset a season. I don't think anybody, is fearing the jump around intro at Camp Randall like they used to when Barry Alvarez was there and everything like that. It's not the same program.
If you're going back, when Ron Dane was there, Melvin Gordon, but it's definitely not the same. My thing is, and getting a little off, Wisconsin is definitely Big Ten football at its finest. Like, we're going to shove it down your throat, and it's changed a little bit now where they're going to have to catch up.
Yeah, and again, the Big Ten of yesteryear, if you may, right? Because that's not what it is now, man. You're talking about the offenses you have there, right? Indiana is a fast-paced, high-scoring offense. Penn State, is an offense that can score on you, right? Ohio State is high-powered, right? Illinois is expected to be, a really good offense. Now you add to that, right? USC, Oregon, all these programs that are not traditional, obviously Big Ten teams, and teams that don't play at all that traditional Big Ten style. So again, digressing a little bit, but again, I don't think Wisconsin is anything that anybody is fearing at this point. You got Penn State, Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers, and then at Michigan. So I've seen tougher schedules, but I think there is the potential for some slip-ups right there. They don't play Oregon. Which obviously is probably beneficial for them because right now I think Oregon is probably, I would take them neutral field. I'd probably take Oregon. So, again, you've got some games there. It's not the scariest schedule I've ever seen. But to me, the over-under being 10.5, I would go under on that particular record.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think 10.5 is definitely not a daunting schedule like it was last year for Ohio State. Having to play, in Oregon with Dylan Gabriel. We don't know what Oregon's going to be with who's ever under center there, but it's definitely not daunting. I think the Big Ten, in my opinion, is kind of wide open. I've never been sold on Penn State. I'm not a Drew Aller supporter. Maybe he can turn me this year, but I've never been a supporter of him.
Yeah,
So I think it's
listen,
wide open. We don't know what Michigan's going to do on that side either. So I think it's kind of a wide open Big Ten, especially with like you said, the exodus of all those players that went to the NFL losing. We'll see what Cardinal Tate does, stepping up into that number 2 role in Ohio State.
Yeah, you got again a schedule that isn't the most daunting. Again, like we talked about, no Oregon, USC for whatever you think of them or not, right? They don't play them. You figure they're going to be. I would assume they're going to be better, right? And so again, a schedule that's not the most daunting. I still think, based on everything I've read, based on everything I've seen, based on people's popular opinion, Penn State seems to be the betting favorite now at this point. Again, when you talk about a proven guy and Drew Aller, who there again, right? Just like you said, I'll piggyback off that. Based on what I've seen, from him recently, not even recently, based on what I've seen from him since he's been in college, right? He's a guy who was again, super highly recruited kid and the whole deal. I don't think he's lived up to that billing, and a guy who now is getting first round buzz, first overall buzz, which to me is insane. But again, we'll see how the season goes. But again, a guy who's surrounded by talent, right? They brought in a receiver, this kid Trevor Pena from Syracuse, who's expected to be really good. They got 2, great running backs, great offensive line, really good on defense. And so, again, I can see how a lot of people would go with them as the betting favorite, and I can see how, again, given what you've lost at Ohio State, not for lack of talent, but for lack of proven talent, again, I can see how Ohio State wouldn't necessarily be the betting favorite, even though again DraftKings has them at 10.5, which if you're putting money on it, and if if you let me use your money, Russ, I'd go on the under on that one.
I mean, if you let me use your money, I'll probably go bet 11.5 and then be like, if it hits 11.5, big win.
I'm going under on that one. And again, not far under. So, everybody relax. I'm not saying 7 wins, right?
But I mean, it's also not what they lost in offense. I mean, you lose, was it Jack Sawyer on defense, who's been that heart and soul of that defensive unit.
Jack Sawyer.
Caleb Williams. I mean, that guy's was a heart and soul of that national title defense.
Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimalu, right? I mean, you lose ballers, right? Glue guys, veterans, leaders, captains are what you've lost with those 2 guys, right? And again, there's talent everywhere, on that defensive line and everything. But what you've lost, I mean, you've lost a lot of talent. I lost more than just talent, right? You lost, again, like I mentioned, you lost guys who were big time. Not only were they big time contributors, but veterans, leaders, captains, that kind of thing. That matters. Yeah. You don't just plug in a guy to replace him. It doesn't matter how highly recruited he was. When you lose guys like that, it matters, right? And so that's what they're replacing on defense. But if any team is fit and to replace that kind of position and those kind of people, it's Ohio State for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you've got arguably the best, I mean, if he's not the best player in college football, the best player on defense for the last 3 years, and Caleb Downs coming back, I mean, I think even though Jeremiah Smith is the sexy pick, and yes, he plays wide receiver, which is the sexy position now, Caleb Downs could easily be the best player in college football. And you bring him back another year. Yes, he's going to be in a new, maybe a little different system because of a new coordinator, but you bring him back. So, but the loss of the players you lose on defense, not just like you said, the loss of their talent, but of the leadership and experience they brought on that side of the ball.
Yeah. What's interesting to me about, and now all the projections, right? I mean, rivals and everybody, right? They do like their top 50 and their, whatever players in the country, right? And just about everybody has Caleb, Jeremiah Smith followed by Caleb Downs. What I find interesting about those 2 positions and those guys being the quote unquote best players in the country, which I don't know how many people would push back on Jeremiah Smith being the best player in the country, right? The difference is now, in 2025, and the guy was incredible as a freshman, right? I mean, just put up monster numbers and everything like that. Nobody could cover him. But, he was he was being thrown passes, from a veteran quarterback, a guy who wasn't a super high draft, but a guy who got drafted in the NFL, a guy, very, very competent, veteran dude. Now you replace him with a guy like Julian saying, what does Jeremiah Smith look like now, this year? And again, I think you can just about, close your eyes and throw it up and, Jeremiah's going to go get it. So it's interesting to me what he'll look like this year. We know how talented he is, but we're going to see now what he's going to look like with a guy who's not experienced, who really hasn't done anything at the college level. Caleb Downs on the other side of the ball is really interesting to me too, right? Because when you look at what he had in front of him, right, as a DB, you thrive when your front seven is talented, right? When it's guys that the O-line has to worry about in the whole deal, right? That front seven it really helps out with those DBs, right? And so based on what they lost on the D line, based on what they lost, at the linebacker position, it's going to, they're talented at DB for sure, but it's going to be interesting to me to see how that defensive backfield looks now that you're replacing so much talent and production on the front seven, right? And so we know how great those guys are, but really interesting to me to see if those guys, not again, I'm not saying a regression necessarily. I'm not saying, come end of 25, those guys are going to be off draft boards. Like it's not going to happen. Caleb Downs is going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL. Jeremiah Smith is going to be, if he's not the first pick in the draft when he comes out in 27, he's going to be a top 3 pick, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that. But it'll be really interesting to me based on those positions and how much they're dependent on the people around them. In Caleb Downs' case, the people in front of him, and Jeremiah Smith, so reliant, as a receiver, you are quarterback dependent. It'll be interesting to me to see what people's opinions are on these two guys come end of 25 based on, again, what they've lost and how important those pieces are to what they do at their respective positions.
Q, you know what I forgot? When I was doing the introduction, I was just so zoned in. I forgot I'm Russ Morgan. It's my other co-host, my other co-host who's obviously, being a little more professional today. Q from the I Hate Football podcast. We're always here.
Yes, sir.
I was just zoned in so much. I totally forgot that. I don't think you noticed. Maybe you noticed, but you just kind of went with it. But
yeah, just went with it, man. I think you were so excited. You were so excited for today's topic, man. You just, you couldn't wait. You dove in with both feet, man. You were ready to go.
And don't get me wrong, I love SEC football. I talk SEC football all the time, but I don't think Georgia's as exciting as they've been in years past. And Ohio State with Jeremiah Smith and Caleb Downs and replacing Will Howard and coming off the national title, will they be able to repeat? Is an exciting topic. I mean, going off a little bit on the Ohio State, do you think now we're starting to see in college football, like we saw with Notre Dame, who made the national title game against Ohio State with the fifth-year veteran quarterback, and then obviously Ohio State winning it with a fifth-year veteran quarterback? Do you think we're starting to see a little shift in college football now, where we're seeing, hey, these guys, yeah, they're not high draft picks, but they're coming in, they're experienced and can coming in and competing, and because of that experience, they can help their team win the title?
Yeah, listen, man, welcome to the new era of college football, right? When you're looking at the top 12 quarterbacks, I think that were taken this past year, 11 of them were transfers, right? There was one that wasn't, and it was Jalen Milroe, right? And so you're looking at, obviously, with NIL, with the transfer portal, and there's this new prevailing thought, right, that you don't necessarily want to go and spend huge in high school quarterback recruiting, right? Because of how fluid that position is, right? You're really, to me, it's I think it's going to start to look more and more like NFL football, right? Where you have, your one, most teams, right? And I say most teams are, depending on what your thought is in terms of what is good, what's elite. You have your starter, and then your backups are huge questions, right? They're not to the level of what your starter is. And again, because of the money, because of what you have to allocate to the position, right? And so you're seeing more and more, varying reasons why people transfer, right? But I think around the country, you really are starting to kind of look at things differently in terms of, right, you look at the teams that made the playoffs last year, and the teams that, for example, like Ohio State didn't win with an elite quarterback, right? Notre Dame didn't have an elite quarterback, right? You have Texas, who didn't have an elite quarterback in Quinn Ewers, right? Very highly recruited, but Quinn Ewers wasn't elite by any stretch, right? A lot of people were calling for Arch, to take over for him at multiple times during the season last year, because Quinn Ewers, just wasn't playing well, right? And so, again, so on and so forth, right? I mean, you had good quarterbacks, obviously, but when you're looking at the teams who went far, Georgia, had Carson Beck till the end of the year, and then you had Gunnar Stockton and the whole deal. And so, again, it wasn't necessarily being elite at quarterback that got these teams, to where they were, right? It was being really good on defense, right? Because all of them, I think, had like top 12 overall defenses and stuff. Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas, right? All these schools, Georgia. And then, at quarterback, they were okay to good, right? None of them were elite, right? Riley Leonard was throwing the ball, he was throwing for like 85 yards a game, because they ran the ball and played defense, right? And so Ohio State they were a little bit more explosive, right? But, you look at these teams, and by and large, right, what the teams that went the furthest with kind of the same formula, right? Is really good defense, running the ball, and good at quarterback, not necessarily great at quarterback. The best quarterback in the country by a mile was Cam Ward. And then look at him, right? No defense, and, they didn't make the playoff, right? And so you're looking at what's important, and it's, again, building, the trenches, right? Being good at O-line, being good at D-line, right? Being able to run the ball at the end of the day. And again, if you score a lot of points, that's fine. But okay, how are you doing it? And how is that defense helping you out, right? It's the most important. It's the most interesting team game to me, around, just because of how every unit affects the other one, right? Just because you have a great offense, doesn't mean that you can overcome a bad defense, right? Totally different sides of the ball, but they all affect each other, right? Then you throw special teams in there and stuff like that. And so, again, every unit affects, every other unit. But when you look at what it is that the winning formula seems to be here recently, even with Alabama, right, and the very recent pass and everything, Georgia, so on and so forth, right? Can they score? Yeah, right. And some of those numbers are a little bit inflated, right, based on who they play, some G5 teams and everything like that kind of inflate those numbers. But I think the winning formula seems to be right now, be elite, right? Have NFL draft picks at O-line and D-line, be able to run the ball and be solid to good at quarterback. And I think you have a chance.
I mean, if we're really getting down to the playoff, the quarterback play wasn't the most exciting thing. Yes, you had the potential with Drew Aller. Dylan Gabriel was probably the most exciting offensive quarterback in the college with the numbers he put up. But that's also the guy who's on his his third school. Was it a system? So, I mean, it wasn't really – I don't think the quarterbacks, they did their in the 12-team playoff, they did their job, not making the mistakes, but it was the full unit that got there and ended up getting Ohio State to win it all. It was the defense, the O-line, the running game, which they're going to have to replace two massive guys in the backfield who are both second-round guys, draft picks. So that's a massive hit. But going off of our question, and we probably have similar opinions, what do we think is going to keep Ohio State from winning it all and repeating this year? What do you think is in your opinion?
Dude, I'll be honest with you, man. I think, and before I answer that, touch on I'm going to answer that, but you're transitioning from, your defense is in transition too, right? Not only what you lost in the draft, but now you're replacing Jim Knowles, who not only did he leave, but he left to go to Penn State, which is crazy, right? When you look at, you probably had the best set of coordinators in the country last year, right? You had Chip Kelly, you had Jim Knowles, right? I think when you look around the landscape of college football, I think it's hard, to push back on the fact that was probably the best set of coordinators in the country, and now they're both gone, right? Not only did you lose Jim Knowles, but you lost him to a conference rival in Penn State, right? Who lost their defensive coordinator, went to Clemson, right? And so now they were like, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take Ohio State's defensive coordinator, which is huge. I mean, that's huge in my opinion, right? A guy, not only did they take him from one of their biggest rivals in the conference, but they didn't take like a linebackers coach and make him DC, right? They didn't take some nobody. They took their sitting DC and brought him over to Penn State, stole him from Ohio State. So to me, that's huge, right? Given how good that defense was last year. And now you're looking at what it is you're replacing, a guy like Matt Patricia, who, for those who don't remember the name, guy who was, Bill Belichick's DC in New England when they were winning Super Bowls, and the whole deal, not the whole time. Obviously they had Romeo Crennel and some other guys, at defense, but, a guy who was very prominent in that organization, went to the Lions and was there and wasn't great necessarily, but now he's the DC at Ohio State, right? And so really interesting to see, what that's going to be like. A guy who is competent, a guy who is knowledgeable, but a guy who, doesn't have the background at, in college that a Jim Knowles did, right? And so he's going to be coaching talent, right? And you like to think that, where he's coached gives him an edge in terms of, X's and O's and strategy and the whole deal. But again, not a foregone conclusion that what he's going to replace, right, is he an upgrade? We don't know that, right? And the players that he's going to have to replace, are they're going to be immediate upgrades? That's debatable, at best, right? And so when you take all that into consideration, to me, I have to look at a team like Ohio State, and again, I know they're talented, and I know they're, everybody, thinks really highly of them and stuff, man, but I have doubts. And the original question was, tell me again, refresh my memory.
What's going to keep them from winning, repeating this year?
Even with all that, I still think it's the offense.
Yeah.
Like, I still think it's the offense. I think you can, when the coordinator change on defense, I think historically tends to be an easier change, an easier, turning of the page, essentially, right? People they pick up the defense just isn't as intricate necessarily as offense. And so you see a bigger transition quicker when you change coordinators on defense than I think you do on offense. Can you see a quick progression or a quick transition in offense? Yeah, I mean, you can, but I think it tends to be quicker on defense. So I think the defense will maybe not be as good as last year, given what they lost, but I think they're still going to be really good. But I think on offense, man, I think you're going to see a regression. I think, like I mentioned before, I don't know that Brian Hartline, again, man, they kept him around. They gave him a raise and the whole deal because now he's the OC. I know he can recruit the wide receiver position. I just have questions about what he's going to be like as an OC. Is he going to be good for Julian Sayin? Is he going to be good for that system in terms of, being able to replace everything, being good on game days in terms of being a play caller and the whole deal? I just think there's a lot. Obviously, he's got Ryan Day, who his background is obviously on the offensive side of the ball, and I think that's probably going to be more of a collaborative effort than maybe is going to be reported, right? I think obviously Hartline will be the OC, but I think Ryan Day will have a lot to say in the offense. But again, man, you're replacing a guy like Chip Kelly, right? Who was a hell of an OC, hell of a play caller. A guy who adjusted on the fly last year to some deficiencies, up front and the whole deal, and made great calls and the whole deal. I just don't know that Brian Hartline in year one as an OC with a new quarterback, new running backs, an O-line that on paper doesn't seem to be as strong as last year. In my opinion, not only do they not repeat, I don't think they win. Again, the over-under is 10.5. I'm going under. I'm going to say, generously, I'm going to say 9 wins. Could I see them, making the playoff? I mean, again, I don't think that's a stretch necessarily, but I don't see them winning the Big Ten. I still think, in my opinion, the favorites to me are probably Penn State and Oregon. Gun to my head. Again, do I see them being good? Yes. Do I see them being great? No. I definitely see them going below their projected win total of 10.5.
I mean, I won't go that far. I think the talent, but on the offensive side and the defense might be able to mask some of the deficiencies the offense might have early. But I'm with you that 100% going back to back. I mean, when's the last time we saw that? It's going to be super tough. Breaking in a new quarterback like this, well, I think he could be very good, and having Jeremiah Smith and Cardell Tate on both sides, where we saw what Jeremiah Smith did with Will Howard, which if we're going Julian Saints, probably a lot more talented than Will Howard, but you're going to go up against Texas right off the bat. It's not like he's going to get a couple cushy games to break himself in right off the bat. You're in the national spotlight playing, and it's going to be the spotlight because Arch Manning's starting on the other side. So all eyes are going to be on you. And we all know what Sark can do, who's done a solid job, very good job at Texas. But I think having Smith and having Tate, being able to see what he did with Will Howard, that this guy is just a freak, will help him out so much. I don't know if they will. I don't think they're going to go back to back. I think it is a wide open college football landscape this year, but I still think there's a good chance they could, in my opinion, at least make the playoffs. But back to back, I think it's a very slim chance that happens.
Again, there's no way I'm buying into back-to-back talk. That to me, it's not happening. You mentioned about the schedule with Julian saying open up against Texas, and you've got kind of two cupcakes afterwards. Grambling, and then Ohio. Before you're in your bye week, a really early bye week too, man, which is September 20th. That's crazy after 3 games, and then you go to Washington after that, and so. There again, man, I mean, after Texas, we'll see what Washington is going to be like. People are saying they're going to be pretty good. So
I think what, in my opinion, man, I mean, my team's Arizona. So, I mean, I love it. Arizona's my football team, but they're not. It's more like basketball, baseball. But Jed Fish is a very good football coach.
Very good. Yep.
So I think in year 2, he's going to start. Now he's going to have more of his guys, because you saw what he did his last year at Arizona and turning that football team around.
And so did well.
I think they're going to be a lot better than they were last year, because now he's going to have those guys, the guys who are returning a full year into the system, and then he's going to be able to bring in more of his own guys. Yeah. So I won't be counting out Washington. Do I think they're a Big Ten contender? No, but I think they're going to be better because Jed Fish is very good coach.
Exactly. Yeah, they're going to be competent on offense. They did really good in the transfer portal with some guys they brought in. He brought in some guys with him from Arizona, which I think are going to help, in that transition. I don't think a win at Washington is a given by any stretch of the imagination, right? And so you talk about home field advantage. They're a team who plays really well at home. You got to travel there as your first road start. If you're Julian saying so. Again, not a gimme by any stretch, right? So. There again, man, I think I can see them maybe being tripped up somewhere, along the line. And again, I'm saying single-digit wins, again, not calling for 7 wins, right? But I can see it, being a 9-win team, and it wouldn't – I think, they could be really good and miss the playoff, right? I don't think missing the playoff necessarily makes you a bad team. I just, just not as good a team as you had, the previous year. And I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. So there again, man, I think that's what we got on Ohio State, a team that, again, is very talented, really good. But in my personal opinion, 10.5 wins is rich for my blood. If I was betting, Russ Morgan's money, I would definitely bet the under, and I would go probably 9 wins. If I was betting
Russ Morgan's money, I'd go 10 wins too. If I was betting Q's money, I'd go over 10.5 because
12
if I lose, it's your money. If I win, I'm winning big. But if it's my money, I'd probably say 9 to 10 is a safe bet. Just breaking in a new quarterback and 2 new coordinators, especially the coordinator with Brian Hartline on the offensive side. We'll see what he does and get thrown into the fire right off the bat. And I did get an update. Our intro is on the way.
Bobby better move his ass.
Okay,
Is what I think we're trying to get to.
Bobby, right? I will say if you're listening, it's not your mug we don't like to see. It's we got to see Fitzstanz's mug every time we come on. So that's pretty tough mug to look at.
Oh goodness. Yeah, man. We hopefully he'll have something cooked up here soon, and he'll hook us up with something that we like and that we'll be happy with. Hopefully, well before the football season starts, so people can start getting used to the new intro and the new look of College Blitz, man. So yeah, man, there you have it, man. Anything else you wanna tell the people before we wrap?
No, I think maybe it's the new, and in my opinion, maybe it's the new the transfer format. But I'm definitely think, in my opinion, we're starting to see two dominant conferences in the Big Ten and the SEC. And yes, we're seeing the Big Ten was a little better last year, but I mean, I think in my opinion, like I don't see. Oh, what's up, JB? How's it going, man? Thanks for tuning in. I don't.
JB, what's up, brother?
I wouldn't put it out of the realm that Ohio State could win it. The Big Ten, I think it's a wide open Big Ten this year, like we've seen in the past, and it's just like we've said, it's going to come down to breaking in a new quarterback, highly touted quarterback, but new, and a new offensive coordinator.
Yeah, 100%.
You lose 14 guys. I think there's going to be a drop off, but we'll see what they do on August 30th, right up against Texas out there in Columbus.
Yeah.
And will they be able to beat Michigan? Because that's, I mean.
Yeah, man. At that point, they won't be a finished product. Obviously, it'll be game one. But we'll definitely get an early look at Julian Sain. We'll see if he's legit, if he lives up to the 5-star billing, if he lives up to the starting quarterback at Ohio State billing. Brian Hartline. There's no easing into it, right? We're gonna find out. Game one. Hey, what does he look like? Have they replaced all these guys they lost? It's gonna be a really, really tough test. It'll be a really interesting game. I'm looking forward to it. August 30th, along with a whole bunch of other good games. That day and that weekend. So super, super interesting, man. Super ready to go. 5 weeks out. Cannot wait. Actually, I think we figured out we're 4 weeks out because there's games on the 23rd, which is insane to me. I think that's super early for but hey, but I'm with it. I'm 100% with it. August 23rd, football. Hey,
I wish it was going in and be like, hey, don't get me wrong, like. I was like, I'm gonna have to watch some FCS, some FCS games. Don't get me wrong. If NDSU's on the TV, I'll watch NDSU all day. I mean, I went to school in North Dakota,
nice.
So like it is NDSU. The Bison.
The Bison, yeah.
I mean that is a religion in North Dakota.
At the Fargo Dome, right?
Fargo Dome's nuts, dude.
Yep.
And in my opinion, and I think. NDSU should. I know why they can't, but they should be a full, move up to FBS. They're good. Another topic for another day. But there's
definitely some limitations and restrictions there that I think would prevent them from really ever making that move. Plus, they dominate. They dominate at that FCS level, man.
Well, it's the facilities aren't big enough to
exactly. Those are the limitations right there. And I don't know what the money looks like in terms of infrastructure and funds and everything to be able to, that's not an easy transition. Teams have done it, but it's not an easy transition. You can see it. James Madison's ahead. Did it recently, and they were competitive year one. They were, immediately, and I think they would be too. I think North Dakota State would be too. Again, don't know if there's the appetite for that necessarily in that part of the country, based on what they do and how they do it. That would be my thought on it. But, something we could discuss later on, man. But, brother.
Before, remember, we're going to be on want to give us our viewers the time for next
week? Man. So next Thursday, July 31st, we'll be back on with the third in a 5-part series of title contenders. Why they won't. We won't tell you who the team will be. we'll surprise you with that. But yeah, Thursday, 31st, 7 p.m. Will be part 3 of the series. We'll get Bobby to do the edits and hook us up with all that. But you guys stay tuned for that. Yeah, you better be working. But you guys stay tuned for that. If you guys like what you heard, man, do us a huge favor, like and subscribe to the show, as well as all the other great content on FTSN Extra. College Blitz. We're sitting here trying to do our thing, trying to get ramped up for this college football season and bring you some different type of content, some fun content. We'll get together with some more people on the network as the season gets closer. So looking forward to that. We'll get with Bobby and we'll line up some appearances on our show and on other people's shows and everything like that, and bring you some different content from some other people. But do us a huge favor, like I said, like and subscribe. Everybody on the FTSN network, FTSN Extra, like all their content. Got some great people putting out some great content. And until next time, from my man Russ, I am Q, and we will see you next Thursday, guys. Y'all take it easy. Have a great night.